Well, hello, everyone. Definitely gonna get things kicked off here, if it's okay with you guys. Really excited for this panel. First and foremost, thanks for joining us today at this Endeavor curated panel called Investing in the Americas, Unlocking Capital for High-Impact Companies. I have the wonderful privilege of moderating today's panel. I'm Rachel Smalls, Director of Launch Blue Ventures at the University of Kentucky. We have an angel syndicate that we run and manage that invests in Kentucky-affiliated innovators, and we curate the global community of investors to help back those pre-seed and early stage companies and innovators coming out of the state of the Commonwealth. And so I have the auspicious privilege of moderating today's panel with two rock star panelists here. So we'll quickly get started by doing a couple of intros. I'll lead the charge on that. We first have Julia Figueiredo. Thank you. Was good on that. So Julia is the director of Latin America at Partners for Growth. Over the past 20 years, PFG has provided custom debt solutions to high-growth tech companies globally to support growth and expansion, working capital, fintech warehouse, and acquisition financing needs for over 230 portfolio companies. Before PFG, she worked for 4 years at Silicon Valley Bank, leading the bank's LATAM efforts and managing a portfolio of startups and venture capital funds. And during that time, Julia was a part of the team launching the LATAM Growth Lending Fund in July 2020 in a joint venture between PFG, SVB, and IDB Invest. Julia moved to Miami in August of 2021 to set up the Miami startup banking practice for SVB, and is also a founding member and serves as an advisor to Latinas in Tech. We also have with us Dr. Ginger Rothwalk. She is the Senior Investment Director of HG Ventures, the corporate venture arm of the Heritage Group, where she invests in early and growth stage companies, building the future of circular economy, energy, water, specialty chemicals, and transportation infrastructure. Before joining HG Ventures, Ginger served as the Vice President of Technology and Commercialization at RTI International, where she oversaw commercialization of $1 billion of portfolio and R&D, and served as a mentor and coach in numerous scientific innovators. So has been on both sides of the house here as a founder and now as a funder. So really excited for today's panel, everyone. As someone who has worked closely with entrepreneurs across emerging ecosystems in the US, we've all seen firsthand the power and the challenges of building and backing companies outside of traditional capital centers. And so we're really excited today to take that conversation forward and really zoom out and look at the broader Americas as a collective, globally competitive region and emerging market to look at, where the opportunity and urgency is in each of those markets, and really talk about how we're living in a momentous moment right now where innovation is everywhere and opportunity is everywhere, but capital is not. And so the question that we're going to really try to answer and tackle today through our conversation is, how do we build investment pipelines that are bold, that are inclusive, and regionally connected? And more importantly, how do we unlock capital, not just for growth, but for real, true impact? So without further ado, the boring part's out the way. Let's dive into our conversation today, ladies. First and foremost, thank you for joining us today. So Julia, I'll start with you with our first question here. You've worked extensively with startups across Latin America and helped launch innovative financing vehicles like the LATAM Growth Lending Fund. Talk a little bit about that fund at first, and talk a little bit about your approach there, and what do you see as the most urgent capital gap in the region today, and how we can rethink by using investment models like what you've built at that growth fund.
Great, thank you. Hi everyone, Julia Figueiredo. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Endeavor, for the invitation. I'm also on the board of Endeavor Miami. Does everyone here know Endeavor? Who knows Endeavor can just... Okay, so I need more people on this side to get to know Endeavor. It's an amazing organization, a nonprofit that started 25 years ago aiming to connect entrepreneurs in that don't have a lot of access to capital and mentorship. It started in Argentina, and now it's in 50 or 60 countries around the world. And in the U.S., we have the director for the Midwest here somewhere. So yeah, providing access to capital and mentorship to entrepreneurs in emerging markets. So I'm also on Partners for Growth. We are a growth debt fund. I'm just going to take a step back. At Endeavor Miami, we started last year, and it started with the previous organization, the previous government, and we're working to continue on this as well. We started within Endeavor and the Biden administration, the investor network. So it's a network of investors that pledged $1.7 billion to invest in Latinos, Latinos and Caribbean founders in Latin America and in the U.S. If we know today, 20% of the population in the U.S. is Latino, 40% of the workforce. So, and I think there is also a parallel between underserved founders in Latin America and underserved founders in general in the U.S. I moved from Brazil directly to Silicon Valley, to San Francisco. So there you go for a happy hour and everybody's connecting. All the major VCs are there. So access to capital and mentorship in San Francisco and in New York, it's easy to get. But here in Indiana, in Miami, which is improving, in Texas, there's still a need of creating this ecosystem. So I think that's why an event like that, an organization like Endeavor, the fund that you work for, are bringing bridging this gap. So there's a lot in the underserved ecosystems, a lot of seed capital, angel capital, but not a lot of growth. So after the company gets friends and families or seed and it's starting to grow, there's not a lot of options anymore. So the major VCs are in Silicon Valley and the network is small, and like where do these companies can find funding? So the initiative that we are working with Endeavor in the investor network is to try to get access and mentorship where we don't currently have. And with Partners for Growth, we are a U.S. San Francisco-based fund. We started lending in the U.S., but we quickly saw the potential of these underserved areas. In the U.S., we have a few companies in the Midwest and outside of the U.S. So we do lending to growth companies. So the company is not yet big enough for banks to work with them. And so banks will not lend to them, and then maybe they don't have access to VCs, or they don't want to get diluted too much. So there's not enough this type of capital. So that's where we play. We're trying to get that growth capital to unlock the potential of these companies without losing too much of their equity, and connecting them to mentors and other sources of capital as well.
That's amazing. Density is super important, and trying to create that capital density is definitely what that initiative that you guys speak of is phenomenal. It's phenomenal to have that in place and to have that collaboration, the power of that collaboration come to life with those two or three entities rather. I know capital density is something that all of our markets face and all of the geos that we operate in. And coming to you, Ginger, and talking about a little bit about the areas that you guys focus on at HG and all of kind of the related dynamics within that. You guys have been around for some time, have been early kind of in this market, particularly in Indianapolis and even across the U.S. And so that density, I'm sure, is another challenge that you guys have faced of getting capital allocated to great founders that are building great things. Your portfolio at HG Ventures spans across a myriad of sectors and industries, particularly in climate, energy, water, infrastructure, and the like. And all of these areas essentially are mission critical right now, right? And at a time where it's crucial for the future of both Latin America and the U.S. So when you guys kind of dive into great companies, talk a little bit about, first and foremost, the overall kind of thesis about HG, and then how do you as a team kind of evaluate the impact, the scalability, the opportunity set when you come across a really great founder that's building in one of those areas?
Sure, and thanks for having me, everyone. So HG Ventures is the corporate venture arm of the Heritage Group, and if you have no idea what the Heritage Group is, you're not alone. We are one of those quiet, Midwest, family-owned businesses that happens to be fourth generation and multi-billion dollars that no one's ever heard of. So don't be surprised if you haven't heard from us. The Heritage Group works in a couple of different industries, like you said, and our ventures group was started about 8 years ago to invest in those sort of core, adjacent, and even disruptive to those legacy industries in which we look to invest. So we have, it's a corporate venture fund where we look at investing where the Heritage Group can help. So our thesis is if we can bring the assets and resources of the Heritage Group to help the entrepreneurs in which we invest, they can grow bigger and faster, but we still look for a financial return, which is a little bit different than some corporates that are more strategically focused. So we've got about $300 million that we've invested so far, and we've got a commitment of about double that going forward. So we've got a nice war chest to help us think about the future of legacy industries there. And then speaking a little bit to risk and impact and scalability, I mean, these industries in which we're in, water, construction, circular economy, waste management, are trillion-dollar industries. So in many ways, like the scale and the opportunity on the venture side is absolutely there. Layering on the impact side is really interesting, especially in today's rhetoric, right? We think about impact when we like assess any opportunity as a yes and. There needs to be, every single one of our investments has an impact of some flavor. Often we're in the sustainability world because we're a large environmental organizations. We do a lot of waste management environmental work, but we're thinking, yes, high impact and sustainability, and solving some major problem in the industrial sector. So yes, it is impactful, and it's solving supply chain resiliency in that, and geopolitical risk, right? We think a lot about decentralization of supply chains. Are there small scale systems that we're interested in investing in, not these mega plants that most people have talked about? And if you're in engineering at all, you learn economies of scale. Well, that, with the new technologies and new innovations, that's changing, right? Can you decentralize some of these large systems that have happened? We think about that as a really exciting place. Or labor. Even though people say there's a lot of folks out looking on the job market, in the industries in which we're in, there's never enough people for the work that we do. It's dirty, it's hard, it's challenging work. Lots of driving trucks and like what some people might consider, a lot of the blue collar industries. So we're looking at automation. We're looking at human augmentation through, you have to check the AI box on every panel, so check. We can move on from that. But like thinking about how these new tools and robotics are being adopted by groups like ours early. Construction guys don't like autonomous vehicles. And there's like safety issues, there's adoption issues. We're very slow moving industries. So if we can make an investment to, help reduce the risk and introduce new technologies to our corporations that can then help the startups be better at bringing their technology to the world, then we're real happy. So
that's phenomenal. I think it's a testament as well, being that you guys have been deep in the spaces and sectors specifically that are those adoption timeframes and getting to market, right? Hard tech is hard for a reason, right? And more particularly, the inevitable challenges that your founders are looking to solve, they're huge, they're enormous, and have an inevitable impact to go with that. Into that conversation and into a little bit about mentoring founders, because you mentioned that, and helping them along the way. Both of you have experience in mentoring founders. Julia, through your lens through Latinas in Tech. Ginger, obviously, with the work that you're doing at HG Ventures, as well as your former work at RTI, right? About being able to help founders along. And so let's talk a little bit about the patterns that you guys see and the barriers that underrepresented founders as well as overlooked founders in these geos face when they're trying to raise capital. What's just some of the challenges that you see commonly between those? And as investors, what can we do as investors to kind of close those challenges and those access gaps? I'll start. Either one of you can start out. We can popcorn that.
I can start. I think I see a lot of Latin America founders and underserved here in the U.S. too. I think a lot of them in the early stages don't even know where to start.
Yes.
They have a great idea, they have a plan, but they don't know even how to approach a VC, or if they do it in the wrong way. You need to really understand when you, like, I get cold outreach on LinkedIn and emails sometimes, and I try to respond as much as I can, but it is good that when the founders do their homework and understand what they're asking. So I do lending. It's lending, it's debt, it's for growth stage. You do corporate venture capital. So it's very different how you approach a lender, how you approach a corporate venture capital, how you approach a regular venture capital. So I think it's like preparing. So the mentorship is key. That's why I think Endeavor, Latinas in Tech, and other organizations. I met a wonderful woman outside that has a Emprendedoras Latinas for Indianapolis. So she mentors Latin women to get their business to a place where they can then go and fundraise. So I think like this base is really important in the underserved markets even more. And then after that, it's the access to, it's having the capital. So in Latin America, there's a lot of funds, early stage funds. Maybe in Miami, there's a lot of early stage funds. I don't know much about Indianapolis, and I would love your guys' feedback. But when you get to that growth stage, Series B, Series C, Series D, so a lot of companies fail along this way. And after having raised, after proving market fit, after having like a really good company, and they just fail because they don't have access, they don't know how to get there, they don't have the network. So yeah, I think just building these ecosystems and getting closer to organizations like Endeavor that can help you understand and map investors, so you have more chances to get funding.
Yeah, and if I double down on some of the points you made, I think all founders need to be better at storytelling. Like, that is the number one skill that we look for when we invest in founders. I mean, there's like 17,000 things, of course, we look for, but I think one of the most important one is storytelling, because we want them to be able to, get money from us and other investors, but we also need people to be able to recruit high talent from places like maybe a normal job into your startup. You need to be able to talk to your customers the right way. And so I do think, like your point made on the storytelling and learning exactly what different people are wanting to hear and needing to hear is a really, really important one. So I'd say that would be my number one on that. In terms of access and like closing a gap, that's an interesting one, being in the VC space. So a couple of the ways that we've looked at that for underrepresented founders that you said, right, they don't necessarily have the network, less formal and informal mentors, and underrepresented could also be coming from a small town or what have you, right? So some of the things that we've instilled at HG Ventures is, like you, we don't require warm intros. So many VCs require a warm intro. They want to, they put a high bar on people that have been referred to them from others, right? That's important to them. For us, we're like, let's try to treat everyone the same. You can find me on pretty much any platform that you want to. You have our website, we have LinkedIn, we have like normal email, you have like actually approaching someone at a conference and having a conversation, right? Like there's so many ways to get to investors, and I think we need to be responsive to all of those. So we say no warm intro, and we respond to everyone, as long as you're not like a kitten doing crypto, weird software stuff, which we also get, by the way. I think I get probably 100 startup emails a day, just FYI. Between LinkedIn and my email, I might get close to 100. It might be somewhere between 50 and 100 a day, and about 2/3 of those are not relevant.
Inundation.
So, just for the record,
so
if I don't respond within 24 hours, that's why. But back to the point, like we try to respond to everyone within reason. That's one thing. Another thing we try to do is, once we talk to a founder, if it's clear that they haven't had a lot of network and help, I will do extra coaching with them. Yeah, I was a female founder back in 2001 when that wasn't very popular. Like I understand what it's like to go into a place and help them get comfortable before and have practice with me beforehand. And lastly, we have done a lot more outward looking investment versus inward looking. So yeah, we're responding to a lot of things, but we've also started more often to develop a thesis around, right now I'm looking at waste to energy as a really big one. And we're going out and trying to find using all the tools that you can to find companies. That way, we're trying to touch all the founders that are out there in any way possible. If you have a website, if you have a LinkedIn profile, like we'll see you, and we're doing a lot more outbound sourcing than inbound sourcing, and also to help those that aren't necessarily on our network.
Yeah, and now I think even with ChatGPT and AI, whatever tool you guys use, it's so much easier to do that work because now, like, I fundraise too. So every time now I'm gonna talk to a person, an LP, a potential LP for the fund, I go to Perplexity and then I type the name and then it tells me exactly like which school they went to, what they may be interested in, what they are looking to invest, what their so it's just so they have everything. So like when I go in a meeting, she's like, "Oh, I went to," I'm like, "Yeah, University of Michigan." Like I already know, and then you get that rapport so easily. So I think that's not the conversation at all. But I think AI is super exciting, super scary. But we can use it to be much better at our jobs. I use it like every day.
By the way, if you have a pitch deck or a deck for anybody, be assured that your investor is going to put it into ChatGPT. Do this before. Say, analyze this pitch deck for me. What are the top risks? What are the top questions? What is confusing? Like every associate is doing this right now, and some of the partners and everything. All of them are doing it. So do it beforehand so you know what types of questions are likely to be asked. Even if you're not a VC or whatever, maybe you're doing a presentation, like put it in ChatGPT and see what comes back with on like where does it make sense? Where is it confusing? Because I guarantee you everyone in the investment community does it before they get on a call.
Man, words to the wise on all of that. I mean, it's so true. I mean, it's being prepared, right, and doing your homework in advance, and knowing who you're talking to, what their interest is, where their industry and their focus. Listening to a couple of their podcasts beforehand, right? Doing just the simple diligence before going into that. And to your point about the storytelling, right? I mean, I want to kind of use that same thread to talk a little bit more about the storytelling that we want to do with this panel in terms of the Americas, right? And how each region, both the U.S. and LATAM, really has a story to tell of the inevitable opportunity in investing in these regions. And so, from both of you all's vantage point, I kind of wanted to use that same thread of storytelling, right? How important is it for you and your roles, and you talking about talking with LPs and painting the picture of the inevitable opportunity set for our region? I'd love to just dive in on that a bit and talk about the role that hubs like Miami, like Kentucky, and other regions, they play a huge role in strengthening that cross-border kind of collaboration. And so, are we doing enough storytelling about our regions? Are we doing enough storytelling about the inevitable innovations that we're coming across every day? Are we telling enough? Are we showcasing enough the assets that are here in our backyards? For instance, you talk about the fact that Heritage Group is one of the biggest companies that no one's ever heard of, right? But and the work that you guys are doing with PFG in Miami, and there's so many assets to bear, I would say, in both markets across the U.S. and Latin America. And so, are we doing enough to tell that story and to paint the big picture of the opportunity in these emerging markets? And if not, how can we do better? How can we improve telling the story of the opportunity set for investing in these regions?
Yeah, I think this work started last summer with the Investor Network. One of the ideas of the Investor Network was to protect exactly the Americas. Mm-hmm. And having Latin America so close to the U.S., and I'm biased because I'm Latin American, I love the region. It's a very strategic region for the United States, Mexico, Brazil, and I think there's a disconnection between U.S. and Latin America, mm-hmm. and that's a national security threat because there is illegal immigration, because China is all over Latin America and putting a lot of money on infrastructure and all the things that it would be good for the U.S. to be doing those things, and for us to create a hemisphere that is more united, right? And when I moved to Miami, I realized first I had the idea that it was just party in Miami, but then you realize that Miami is a platform, is a launch pad, it's a connection really from the US and Latin America. There's a lot of entrepreneurs, really good entrepreneurs that built $1 billion businesses in Latin America. They are moving now to Miami. It's also a really good hub if you are a US entrepreneur to start making your way down to Latin America. So we have there Amazon, Facebook, many other big techs in Miami too, using that as a launch pad. So in Miami was actually the first office of Endeavor in the US 10 years ago to help create this ecosystem. There's still a lot. After 10 years in San Francisco, I can see the difference between Miami and San Francisco. So there's still a lot to do. But I think we do need to tell a better story, and that's a big job that many people have to do together, as you mentioned, to unite the Americas, to invest in entrepreneurs that are changing the world, that are changing our economies, that are investing in women as well. First of all, I'm super proud of all women panel. Yesterday, for the first time, I went to the Fever.
Fever, yes.
Fever game. And we have so many entrepreneurs that there are women that are changing their communities and they're giving back to Latin America and giving back to the local community here in the U.S. So.
No, it's a phenomenal opportunity ahead, and to your point, I think it's almost a superpower to embolden some of those entrepreneurs that are in overlooked geographies. They almost have the resiliency that you look for in founders naturally, just because of the dynamics and challenges ahead for them, and so. Being able to amplify the story around what they're building, and also, like you said, championing those founders with support and growth along the way, opening that Rolodex to folks, which is, again, what all three of our groups do, what Endeavor and various networks do. And that story, I would say, is something that we could just be a bigger cheerleader about, right? I think about even to your group as well, in terms of just being able to, for such a while, being operative and being a leader in the Midwest, from 8 years plus now. What are some of the assets here that a lot of folks just overlook? What are some of the inevitable, why people should look at investing and backing great companies and founders in this part of the country? Why should we look over the coast and look in the middle of the country versus elsewhere?
I'm glad you didn't make me answer the question about hubs in Latin America, because we have the expert here, so that's fine. I mean, it's a good question, right? Here I am in Indiana, right? We don't have a lot of ties to Latin America, but we have our own challenges that maybe have some parallels. But the great thing about the Midwest is all the customers are here. And, for the entrepreneurs, it's like a third of the Fortune 500's headquarters are in the Midwest. And so because of the way the world works today, because you can start a company from anywhere, because you can be, spread out, you can have folks in Silicon Valley and New York, but also have headquarters closer to your customers. Why not be here where, Midwest nice is a thing. I'm not from the Midwest, by the way. I'm a Southern girl, but it's wonderful to live here. You get really good talent of people who come and want to stay. We don't have the challenges. I lived in Silicon Valley for a little bit, where people would, go in, get their 2 to 3 years of equity, and then jump to the next thing. That doesn't happen as much here. You have talent that's more loyal. You have really great entrepreneurs that are older, and anybody who sees any of the stats, it's like the 40-year-old entrepreneurs are really killing it. Maybe I say that because I'm a middle-aged mom, but and I'm not 40 anymore, but. It is an interesting place and a dynamic to be in, and you can grow companies where you have loyal folks, where you're close to your customers, and it's a really good quality of life. So I think those things make it easier to attract folks here. Once they're here, they tend to stay.
Talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions, I would say, because you're still in this conversation about telling the story, right? And talk a little bit about our regions that we invest in. Investors often cite when they think about emerging markets. They often cite political or economic instability. They'll give other reasons in terms of maybe execution risk, given that you're in markets that obviously are not the usual suspect hubs, the Silicon Valleys, the Austin, Bostons, New Yorks. Given that both of you all have dual continent portfolios, right? You have portfolio companies that represent kind of a myriad of regions. How do you assess that when you're in these conversations, particularly with LPs, but also with others, and telling the story about that kind of opportunity with those founders?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind starting because VCs, we talk about risk all day, right? We're taking tons and tons of risk, and there's risk that we're comfortable with. As a corporate VC, we're very comfortable with tech risk. We're very comfortable with scale risk. We're comfortable with market risk because we understand the markets in which we're investing in. There are things that we're uncomfortable with, and it's good for everyone to know. Like, we're not comfortable with labor law risk in other places, right? We're not comfortable with governance risk. We don't understand like what governance looks like, how you get your money in and out of company and countries, but we don't want to miss out on the opportunities. And so our strategy is to go in as, for those who are not familiar, as a follow-on investor or co-lead with someone who is in the region. So we rely on partners. We can come and bring the knowledge of the technical side or the market side, or even we're helping companies outside the U.S. come into the U.S. and we're giving them advice on how to come into the U.S. But we need a local partner for reasons that, like, yeah, you have like the legal and the governance and the, it sounds kind of boring, but it's super important to our portfolio. But we also want somebody to have an investor nearby. The stuff hits the fan all day long in ways in which no one can ever predict, and to have an investor nearby and a partner that you trust that can actually have coffee in a face-to-face meeting, we put a lot of importance behind that. And so we're always looking in areas outside of the US or Canada to have an investor there that's local. We'll go and travel a couple of times a year for board meetings. We always do in-person board meetings, but I think having someone that can just be the phone call and maybe a coffee away is super important for us.
I mean, we're lenders, right? We don't like risk. But it's interesting that we've been in the market for 21 years, started in Silicon Valley, and now I think 70% of our portfolio is outside of the US in emerging markets where there's not a lot of services and products like what we do. And most of our LPs, our investors, are in the US. So we got this question all the time, like, this is too risky, you have currency risk, you have political risk, and we are in more than 20 countries we have portfolio companies. So that's a lot of risk to manage. But then we did a risk assessment on all the 255 companies that we have. And the US ones, we had more loss on the US, not risky ones, than on the other side of the portfolio. Because our tagline on our website is, we go where the entrepreneurs are. So if it's a good team, it's a good market. Like, we're not equity investors, so we're not trying to get 50x return and like it has to be the best idea. We want to see good, solid businesses that are returning, that have revenue. If they're not profitable, they're on the way to profitability. So we underwrite very heavily to the business, and of course we try to find businesses that will be less impacted by government. Or, for example, we used to do a lot of solar, but solar, one day there's a law, the other day there's another regulation, so we stopped doing that. So we do like fintech, asset-backed deals, SaaS deals, that there are many really good ones here, but then maybe they have more access to capital. And outside of the US, we can get really, really good companies that are a lot less risky. So that's how we manage risk internally.
I often cite some of the work that Endeavor, with their research side, the Insight team, where they uncovered some critical kind of success characteristics of what they look for in founders, and what kind of inevitably pattern recognition that you could look at to assess, a successful team, an successful founder, and that sort of thing. I brought that up because I think about these questions about risk and how you can kind of utilize those common misconceptions, those common kind of thoughts around why someone shouldn't consider, U.S. overlooked geos in the U.S. and LATAM. But there's another unique thing that I know Endeavor published quite a while ago as well, which was talking about how there's so much applicability to the innovations that they support, that they back, companies that they invest in. And for both of you, right, in terms of the portfolio companies that you have, do you have like a shining star example of companies that kind of represent this narrative about highlighting the best of...
We have no favorites.
You see, I tried to color that without asking. I'm not asking you to pick
We
your
love
favorite
everyone
children.
equally.
I'm not asking you to pick your favorite kids, not at all. But just maybe an example company or just an example team that have you seen them come along and that their innovations, obviously, maybe there were some things about them at first when you in first glaze or first kind of glance didn't seem like an inevitable opportunity, and now it's a massive upside that you didn't see coming, right? Yeah.
We'll have a board meeting tomorrow with a company, so we'll pick that one because it's easy.
There we go.
Yes. We have a company called Pretread.
Okay.
They take old tires and convert them into construction barriers. When you're driving down the highway, you see those cement barriers on the side of the road? There's been zero innovation in that for 150 years. By the way, one of those barriers is $500. So for the love, look at all that opportunity. And it's interesting because there's the waste side, which tires are a mega problem in every country. And they're getting interest from all over the place. You can't put them in landfills anymore. People are burning them for cement fuel, but there's really nothing else you can do with them. And so they're taking these tires. And by the way, when all of us get our tires changed on our cars, we pay a fee, right, for our tires to go somewhere, right? Well, this company can take part of that fee. So they get paid to take in their raw materials. They have to process them. And so this is circular economy at its best.
Yes, absolutely.
You're getting paid to take your feedstock. You process it to where you can use it. So then you basically have no cost of goods sold. And then you're producing a product that is potentially, it's a higher sustainability product. It's a unique innovation. We're working on all of the road tests right now to show that it's safer, actually, because you get some give. Especially in these electric vehicles. I have the new EV9 from Kia, which is a big SUV, like a Rivian. I'm like, that if that hits a barrier, that's very different. The weight on that car is very, very different. And so there's ways that you can manipulate things. And so I just like the construction and waste parallels and the fact that it is applicable to every country has problems with tires. And this is a really interesting solution for it. So.
And it hit all the things that makes investors go, hell yes, right? That's crazy. That's crazy. No cost of goods sold. That's phenomenal. For you, Julie, what's an example company that maybe showcases this, opportunity for applicability of different markets beyond just the home country or home market that company comes from?
Yeah, I was trying to think which one. But we have a really interesting company in Australia called Koala, like the koala bear. Which it's totally out of our investment criteria. It's direct to consumer. They sell really cool sofa beds that they ship to your house. You can do it ourselves, with no tools. They look super cool. I've slept on one for a week. It's really comfy. They don't look like those ugly sofa beds. They're a hit in Australia, and they just launched in the US, and they're a hit in the US. I'd never told my friends that Koala was our portfolio company. I went to 3 of my friends' houses in San Francisco, and they all had koalas. So please, look at Koala. And they're growing nonstop, and you think of a couch business, yes. Right? Because we are doing fintech, we are doing SaaS, and then the couch business is through the roof. And then there are some other things that are more impactful, like Baobab, this company in Mexico. They do micro lending for people that don't have access to credit or access to even a bank account. So with face recognition, they scan through the app, and then in 5 minutes they have access to $50. And it changes people's lives in Mexico. For small entrepreneurs, they started the first loan is $50 and then go up to $250. So you think it's nothing, and it's changing a whole community, and they're growing a lot. We were part of a co-investment opportunity of $100 million. So imagine $100 million and $50 tickets. How many lives we are impacting in Mexico? So.
That's awesome. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I have heard of koala, by the way, the koala mattresses.
Yeah?
I've heard of that. That's super interesting. Man, I love to always give examples because it really brings home to kind of the thread in this entire conversation, which is inevitably on the surface, oftentimes emerging markets and overlooked geographies in the U.S., typically in the Midwest for today's conversation, has so many kind of initial biases that often investors particularly they just overlook the opportunity set. And so today's conversation, I'm hoping, was painting the picture a bit more in terms of how our markets are uniquely positioned to take advantage of incredible, inevitably growing markets and growing opportunity, but more so bringing home the opportunity set to where both regions could come together and be more collaborative for the benefit of founders, the high growth founders that are in our regions. I guess I'll end with one final question, which obviously, if there are any questions in the audience, please let us know. We could take Q&A for sure if we have time. But the last and final question for today is, what are you most optimistic about as you're continuing on with your strategies and focusing on kind of the innovations that you guys are focused on? What are some optimistic trends or optimistic business models, things that you've maybe seen that really spark your interest? It's funny because we talked a little bit before about how you would think that this is the worst time to invest, right? Given all the times, right, and the instability and some of the things, but we often know that these are the best times. These are the best times to invest. And so, what are the things that are exciting for you right now that you're seeing in the landscape, and what are you most optimistic about for both your teams?
So my friend Eric gave me his pin, so I have to give him a shout out for Living Bar's pin. So I'm going to say I'm optimistic about water technologies. Everyone is all about carbon and this whole cycle. No one talks about the water cycle, which, by the way, is the second most important cycle in the entire planet. I'm very interested in water reuse, recovery, and cleanliness of water. I live in the industrial world. Water risk is becoming a bigger thing that people are finally thinking about. So I think that's a fun area to be in.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
I'm very concerned and interested about how AI will change a lot of knowledge workers. We're seeing a lot of AWS just fired a bunch of people, Microsoft, and people that we thought would never lose their job, the developers in Silicon Valley, right? They're all I built an app last week on the plane. We can now, we all have that access. So the knowledge workers, the plumbers, they're good, right? But us, so I keep thinking how is this gonna affect how we can use AI to help this shift that is gonna happen in the
Responsibly, yeah.
Responsibly. What are we gonna do with a lot of people without jobs? So I'm a little bit stressed about that. But on the happier side, I am super excited about, this personally, about longevity, and I'm studying a lot, and not to live forever. My great-grandmother died at 105, and she's like, I can't take this anymore. I'm done. My siblings passed, all my kids passed, I'm done. So, but just how do we live to that age, or maybe a little less, but how we have good lives, and we are 70 and we can go up the stairs, climb a mountain. I don't know, and I've been using AI to optimize my blood work, and so I'm excited about that. Things that can make our everyday lives better, and we can live healthier and happier lives.
That's phenomenal. Well, both of those industries and sectors are inevitably in a sea change, right? Just as everything is in terms of technologies. But I appreciate the topic today and the opportunity to kind of discuss with each of you of the importance of all of us coming together and collectively supporting and backing high growth founders in our overlooked geos. So, absolutely.
Thank you. Obrigada.
Thanks, everybody.
Gracias.
Thanks for joining us today, guys. And yeah, if you want to, feel free. Find us in the back if you have questions or connect with our teams, obviously. Thank you.